New toys. Shiny new toys. So, this week, two things. First off, there was a formative last week for questioner. Lots of people haven't taken it yet. Okay? So make sure that you get that done ASAP. Okay? Today, we're going to be in your pink packet, and we're going to be working on 5.2, what is the title of that one? 5.2 note sheet. Section 5.2, Proving Trig Identities, dash 2, day 2. Okay? So we're going to do some of the stuff off of that one. Then I'm going to give you some time towards the end of class to complete the 5.1, 5.2 review, or to start it, I should say, because then tomorrow we're going to focus on that review, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is going to be your 5.1, 5.2 summative. Okay? So that's kind of the schedule for this week. Okay? So, I believe it's on the top of that page, I think, is, yep, this one, okay? And it's worked out for you on the top of the note sheet, okay? Remember that we cannot do substitutions, we cannot do common denominators, we can only work one side at a time, okay? And then we also have conjugates that we can deal with too. So, anytime that you see, let me put the shade back on. Anytime that you see that kind of a fraction, and more importantly, when you see this, when you see that you've got two terms in a denominator, that's your most difficult side. If you see one term in the denominator, that's not very difficult. Okay? But if you see two separated by an addition or a subtraction, that's what we're going to focus on. Okay? And most importantly, you're going to conjugate it. Okay? So the conjugate of 1 plus sign is 1 minus sign. So you're going to multiply both sides, or both top and bottom, by 1 minus sign over 1 minus sign. Because that doesn't change the value of the fraction, multiplying by 1. Okay. On top, you get cosine of beta times 1 minus sine of beta. On the bottom, you get 1 minus sine squared. Okay. The 1 comes from those two being multiplied, and then this one cancels out this one, and then that one gives me the minus sine squared. 1 minus sine squared is cosine squared, and then we can factor out a cosine off of top and bottom. Okay. Conjugates, another tool in our toolbox, along with the identities sheet, the big pink cardstock sheet that you have that's got those identities. And I think we're through. We've got all of the identities on that sheet. 1 through, I want to say this one's numbered. 1, see, mine starts at 10. 1 through 17. So we've got the whole first two columns. Yep, whole first two columns. Okay? So we're good there. This one, I believe, is also worked out for you at the bottom of that page. Cotangent squared minus cosine squared. Adding and subtracting is always more complicated than multiplication. So first off, you'd have to get a common denominator. Cotangent is cotangent squared, excuse me. It's cosine squared over sine squared. So our common denominator would be sine squared. So we'd have to multiply this one by that to get me to this next step. Then I can combine the tops. Then I can factor the tops. Both have a cosine squared in them. So that gets me that. 1 minus sine squared, that is cosine squared in itself. So really we have cosine squared on the top, divided by sine squared. And cosine, oh yeah, we're going to play it that way. Cosine squared divided by sine squared is cotangent, actually. This way with it because cotangent comes first. So there's your cotangent times cosine. Okay. What I'd like you to do now is I would like you to somehow trigonometrically prove that sine squared of x, cosine cubed of x, is equal to sine squared of x minus sine to the fourth of x times cosine. I believe that's is it number 1 on there? Or number 2, excuse me? It's number 2 on the second side of today's note sheet. Which side seems more complicated? Left or right? Right side seems more complicated, yes. I would concur. Okay? Looking at this, my algebra brain kicks in. And what should I do with that? With my algebra brain kicking in. Factor out what? Factor out a sine squared of x. Love it. That's going to leave me with 1 minus sine squared of x. That's cosine. Huh? My trig brain is telling me, what's this? What? Cosine squared. Cosine squared times cosine? Cosine cubed, right? Yes? At home, thumbs? Love it. Love it. Next one. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Now, before we even start, or before I turn it over to you to do, which side do you think looks more complicated? Left? I would concur that the left is more complicated. Okay? So start working left. See if you can get it down to 1 minus 4 cosine all over 1 minus cosine. How can something be too minty? But that hot chocolate is almost too minty. So we said left side. So I would take this there, and I would factor it down to be 1 minus 4 cosine of x and 1 plus cosine of x. Then, and some people did that first step, other people did them both at the same time. I would take this and make it be 1 minus cosine squared. Okay? Then I would take 1 minus cosine squared. I would take this and I would make it be that. Because then those go away. And I'm left with that. Now, I also saw it in reverse, because it also works in reverse. If you wanted to start on the right side and multiply both by the conjugate, okay? So if you multiply both by the conjugate, that would be this purple and orange step, even though the orange isn't really orange on this TV. Multiply it out, multiply out the bottom, you get the green. Multiply out the top, and you get back to the original. Okay? Works both ways. Okay? Works both ways. Love it. Okay? Again, let's determine which side looks more complicated. Anybody? Left side? I'd probably go left side too. Yeah, work a little conjugate action on the left side. Try it. So we said left side, right? And then we multiplied by the conjugate. Agree? Is that where everybody started? Okay, see a lot of heads shaking yes in both spots, in person and out there. So on top then, we would get cotangent squared times 1 minus cosecant. On the bottom, we would get 1 minus cosecant squared. Yes? Yeah. 1 minus cosecant squared. What is that? It is not cotangent squared. Because you're using number 11, right? Or excuse me, number 10, right? Yeah. Okay. So if I go over here on the sideboard, right? That's number 11. So if I want 1 minus cosecant squared, That means that this would have to go to that side, correct? And where does cotangent have to go then? And so that becomes negative cotangent. So that down there is negative cotangent. Agree? No. Anybody see anything off of that one? Should be an obvious factoring. Nope, then that introduces 1 plus cosecant on the bottom. There's something glaringly obvious. Cancels out, right? Leaving you with just negative 1, right? So really, this becomes negative 1 minus. Huh? What's cosecant? What's cosecant? One over what? Sine. Yep. Remember, I want to get it to be cotangent times, what was it? Secant minus tangent. Yeah. Common denominator. We're done. What if I'm just spitballing here. What if I multiplied by cosine of u over cosine? Just throwing it up. Seeing if anything sticks. First, is it legal? Yep. So if I do that, then I get right? Is that working for you? Is that working for you? Or not? No? Did it help us any? The next question. Did anything pop off of that? I don't think so. Okay. Would it help if we went sine over sine? Probably get the same thing then, wouldn't we? Right? Okay. So that's not going to help. Okay? And hey, it's okay to try something and it doesn't work. Okay? Let's try something like, if I rewrote this as cosecant minus 1. I just distributed in this negative sign. So I did. And then you guys said that cosecant was 1 over sine. So now we're there. We need cotangent out front, right? Right? So let's get really crazy. And off of that, let's put cotangent right? Because cotangent is cosine over sine, right? Let's put it out in front. Let's factor it out. So in our brains, let's think about this now. If I factor cotangent out of something that cotangent isn't there, okay? So this blue box, right? When I multiply it, so cosine times sine times my blue box has to be 1 over sine. Because when I multiply those two back together, I got to get this purple thing right there. Right? Well, what is going to get me to that? What's going to fill that box for me? 1 over cosine? Right? So in this box then goes what's got to fill my red box? What do you got? Sine over cosine. Now, if I did that multiplication, right? Cosine times 1 is cosine. sine times cosine is sine cosine, but that reduces to be just 1 over sine. Sine cosine on top, sine cosine on the bottom gets me 1, correct? Okay. Well, this then is cotangent secant minus tangent, which is what I needed it to be. Okay? That one was like creme de la creme tough type one, because you got to factor out a cotangent that's not there. Okay? Which is legal. You just got to know the math behind it. You got to do some side math action going on. Okay? So, what I would like you to do now, a little bit less than a half an hour left. Okay? I would like you at home to stay in class and start working on the 5.1 to 5.2 review page, which is the next page. For those of you at home that don't have a pink packet, I just uploaded them to It's Learning. They are located in today's, the blank copy of the review sheet is located in today's box on the content page. It's also located in the lower right-hand corner box with all of the extra pages for extra practice work for these two sections.